Hi, I'm Lisa Parker, and this is Dave Isbell, and we are your Alumni Career Services team at Michigan State University. Wanting to talk to you today about the concept of a consultant versus a traditional employee. In the economy that we're in, it's actually more common for people to have consulting opportunities than maybe the traditional employment role. And some people are concerned about that because they feel they would like a more stable opportunity. Dave, do you have any thoughts?
Well, to start with, you use the word stable, and I like that word because everybody wants stability, but I think people try to get stability from their employer, and that's really not the employer's job. Everybody knows the day and age of that is old, and but people don't try to adapt their careers for it. So I think if someone looks at the concept of stability as having this kind of bucket full of skills and experiences and relationships that connect them to some kind of larger goal, then their stability comes from a different source than just where they're collecting their paycheck. And so that's the first thing that I think of when you bring that up. So that leads me into like this thought of learning to function as a consultant. You're hired during a time, you should look at it, you're hired for a season of employment with someone to really consult them. So if you treat even the interview as if you're consulting, so when they sit there on the other side of the table, they feel like, wow, they just walk away and they just kind of bought an hour of your time and got it for free. That's a good start of a relationship. And so if you carry out your employment as if you were a consultant, you're just bringing that bucket of tools and skills, experience, relationships, and serving the goal that that employer has put in front of you.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of times people are nervous about the concept of consulting because it feels like it's easier for a company to get rid of you. And the focus shouldn't be on trying to nail yourself into a situation where you can't be gotten rid of. The focus should be on making sure that you are so valuable to an organization, the temptation to part ways with you just isn't there. And in some cases, being a consultant, or at least having the consultant mindset when you're in a job, protects you from that because you realize that if I'm not constantly showing my value, if I'm not making sure that people are aware of what I'm doing and that I'm worth what I'm being paid, we grow detached from that, we really make ourselves vulnerable. And I think a number of the people who we ended up working with as a result of the downturn in the economy, who had that rug pulled out underneath of them, have a real hard time articulating their value to an organization. What's it worth? What do they do that specifically justifies the income that they're hoping to make? And I don't think it's because they don't have anything of value. I think it's because they just weren't in the habit of thinking about it that way and of really taking stock on a regular basis of what they're doing and how it translates to the bottom line of the company, and then how in return are they showing that whatever they're being paid by that employer is a good investment. Because in any situation, whether you're a consultant or an employee, what you are generating in terms of an outcome for the employer has to be more than what they're writing a check to you for, or the relationship steps.
Yeah, and that hits on the concept of, I was talking to people about kind of living your resume. And that means that when you go home at night from work, you don't just go to another compartment. You still take that person with you home and then bring that person back in the morning to wherever it is that you're getting paid to do the work. And so it's really your responsibility to continue to develop as a person, as a human being, to develop as a professional in whatever your trade is by collecting those skills and credentials, and to have some intentionality behind your work. So if you know that you're going to be at a company for 3 to 5 years, which is, that's a long time in corporate America now.
Yeah.
Then what can you possibly give for that 3 to 5 years that makes you be extremely valuable? And what you get in return from having given that away is that resume. You get the story about those things that you accomplished, and you live that out. You take that with you to wherever it is for the next contract that you win after you bid on it, to go and do that next term of service for a company, if you will.
Well, and I think another thought to where it's an advantage to have a consultant's mindset, whether you're a consultant or viewed as a full-time employee, is that consultants realize that their time with an organization is limited. And so it forces them to also stay out in circulation, keep themselves in the loop of what's going on in the business community, who are their networking contacts, let's keep them warm. Individuals who slide into jobs that they imagine themselves in for the foreseeable future are oftentimes at risk of shutting all those activities down.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2 years later, 3, 5, when all of a sudden, oops, I'm looking for work again, I have absolutely no idea what developments have happened in my community. All the people who were my networking contacts when I was looking for work before, I've got to go find them again, see if they'll talk to me through LinkedIn. And it's a very stressful process, and it adds a lot of time to a job search. So in my view, it sounds nice to imagine yourself in some stable environment for the next 20 years, but that's not realistic. It's not a realistic outcome to bank on. So if you can handle the consultant's role, it can be a fun experience. Nothing's a guarantee anymore. But if you're not going the consultant's route, to stick with that consultant's mindset in those traditional employee roles, you might find yourself less vulnerable to layoff and more prepared should it actually happen.
Mm-hmm. I think I would also ask the question, would you want to work for a company that functions like an average employee? Because an average employee goes to the cubicle, hides all day, does as much as they can to not do that much, leaves work at home, and comes back to the work. There's no real commitment to the relationship.
And when you think of the word stable means nothing is happening.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of got a flat line. We're not experiencing anything amazingly upward, amazingly downward.
And so a company like that is going to be probably pretty boring and probably not allow you much growth in your personal or professional life. And so it's really kind of, this same thing we're talking about employees and job seekers, but I mean the same thing is for companies. So when you're out there looking for a company to contract with, look for the vibrancy of the culture. Look for people that are invested in their work. Look for what's the company doing in terms of innovation and things like that, because you're going to create a lot more opportunity in an organization that's like that for yourself to move and shift around. So you may be with the same company for 20 years, but you probably won't be in the same role for more than 3.
Yeah.
So you have to look at that and when you're looking at an employer and use all the resources that you can command to make things work for both you and the employer.
Yeah. And I would say, kind of to wrap it all up, I think the primary, people like stable opportunities because they want the security of the income. They're worried about being laid off or displaced. But at the end of the day, a big part of the reason is people just hate the job search process. I don't want to have to go through that every year, every 2, every 3. But the truth of the matter is, part of the reason some people have such a painful job search process is they're simply not keeping fresh on their skills and they're simply not keeping in the loop of what's going on in their network, as I stated before. And so really, I think if people find that they're keeping themselves fresh, they're aware of what their value is, and their network is strong, as a consultant would be aware, that job search process, even if you have to go through it every 3 years or so, isn't as bad as perhaps the one you just came out of, or the one you're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts, Dave? Key takeaways?
Good stuff. Thank you
Okay.
for bringing that up.